Chapter 10 of My Teacher Glows in the Dark. There are 12 chapters to go, which I know it sounds like a lot, but technically it's not. 21 chapters is actually not a lot for a book. So, chapter 10 is called The Alien Council. After I sat for an hour or so without getting any ideas, I decided to look for Broxholm. Maybe he would help me. Of course, for all I knew, he was one of the ones in favor of torching the planet. But somehow I couldn't bring myself to believe that. The problem was where to find him. The New Jersey had thousands, maybe millions of rooms. It seemed like an impossible task, until it occurred to me that given what I had seen so far, it was likely the ship had a way to keep track of folks. So I asked the U-Rat where Broxholm was. Within seconds I had an elevator code. I punched a few buttons, stepped through the wall, and found myself staring at Broxholm's back. This put me in the minority. Everyone else in the room was staring at Broxholm's front. Everyone else consisted of a group of 8 aliens, arranged in a half-circle, or semicircle. Some were sitting, some standing. One dangled from the ceiling in a sling. Another was stretched across a rack that held up its purple tentacles. At the top of the rack was a nozzle at the top of the rack, a nozzle released a lavender mist that kept the tentacles moist and gleaming. "We expect to reconnect with Creeblim soon," said the alien in the rack. "She should be able to rewire one of the Earthlings so that—" The alien broke off when it noticed me. Broxholm, realizing that the alien was looking past him, turned to see what was going on. "Peter!" he asked sharply. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," I whispered. I was frightened. It was clear I had stumbled into a place where I didn't belong. The knobs on Broxholm's head began to throb. "Return to your room," he ordered. "I will be there directly." I nodded and turned to go, but before I could leave, the tallest of the aliens, a huge sea-green creature who towered over even Broxholm, said, "Wait. As long as the child is here, let's talk with him a bit." He looked around the semicircle of aliens. They all made gestures of agreement, which in this case ranged from a simple nod to a triple armpit fart. "Tell us why you are here," said the alien with the purple tentacles. I thought for a moment before I answered. "Because I believe the human race was born to go to the stars," I said at last. It's what I've dreamed of since I was old enough to understand the idea." "Tell us about your school," said another alien. I did as he asked. The aliens listened carefully, making gestures of agreement or interest or annoyance. Sometimes they seemed astonished, sometimes astonished and disgusted, as when I described our basal readers. "That will be enough for now," said the sea-green alien suddenly. "Thank you for your time." "Wait for me in your room," said Broxholm as I walked past him back toward the elevator. I nodded and continued toward the wall. When I got back into the room, I was shaking. I don't like talking in front of people. It makes me nervous. I was using the U-Rat to get better understanding of the ship when Broxholm reappeared. I had started by trying to find out why the ship was so huge. I couldn't believe they had sent something this big halfway across the galaxy just to drop a few spies on Earth. It turns out that the method the aliens use for skipping over huge distances requires a kind of gravity distortion that can only be achieved with an enormous ship. In fact, the New Jersey was actually the smallest starship yet built. The reason the loading dock was half empty was that the New Jersey had been dropping off smaller vessels here and there as it wandered through the galaxy. That was actually its main job, shuttling between stars, leaving a ship or a dozen one place, picking up new ships in the next, that and carrying out the orders of the Interplanetary Council. I was so engrossed in what I was reading that I actually jumped and shouted when Broxholm came through the wall. "What's wrong?" he cried in alarm. "Nothing," I said. "You just startled me." Broxholm made a sign of understanding. "I suppose anyone living on a planet as violent as yours would need that kind of reflex reaction to stay alive." Even though I had chosen to leave Earth, I was a little sick of hearing it get dumped on like this. And what were you and your pals discussing? I asked bitterly. Some nice, non-violent way to blow up the planet? That's what Peter asked. It was Roxholm's turn to look startled, but he took it in stride. That is one option being considered, he said calmly. My stomach twisted at his words. Out here, so far from home, it was easier to remember the good things about Earth, things like Susan Simmons, dolphins, and chocolate chip cookies. How can you even consider something like that? I asked, trying to fight back sudden, unexpected tears. Broxholm gave his nose a pull. I didn't say I was considering it. I said it was under consideration. Peter, you have to understand that the entire galaxy is in an uproar over this situation. We've been letting it ride for a while. We even got a break from making our decisions because your planet's science got sidetracked a few decades ago. But the time is nearing that we must deal with what is known across the stars as the Earth question. Why? Because while they are not aware of it, your people are fast approaching the breakthrough point in space travel. You mean we're about to figure out how to go faster than light? I whispered in awe. Broxholm nodded. We've been monitoring your science carefully. We know better than you yourselves how soon you will be able to go into space. He paused, then crouched in front of me. Putting his hands on my shoulders, he looked directly into my eyes and said, Do you understand what that means, Peter? I shook my head, feeling somewhat baffled. It means that for the first time in the 3,000-year history of the Interplanetary League, we are going to have to deal with the people who are not at once smart enough to conquer space and foolish enough to have wars. It means a peace that has lasted for 3,000 years, a peace that extends over 10,000 worlds, is in danger. Of course, we are considering extreme measures, but the fate of Earth is by no means decided. The truth is that there are four main plans under consideration. What are they? I asked, not entirely sure I wanted to know. One group believes we should take over your planet. A second thinks we should leave you on your own to see what happens. They believe you'll destroy yourselves before we ever have to worry about you. The third group wants to quarantine you. What do you mean by quarantine? I interrupted. Cut you off from all connection with the greater galaxy, said Roxholm. This could be done by setting up a space shield beyond which you could not pass, or by planting agents on Earth to sabotage your science, so that you could not learn how to get off the planet. That's terrible, I cried, furious at the thought of anyone trying to bar us from space, from exploring the stars. I agree, said Broxholm, but not as terrible as what might happen if you actually move into the galaxy at large. That is why one group simply wants to destroy the planet. They don't like the idea, but they think it is far better than letting you loose on the galaxy in your present condition. But why don't you just help us? I cried, feeling scared and angry all at once. Broxholm closed his orange eyes. We don't know if we can. We believe there is something dangerously wrong with your people. This belief is based on three factors. First, the way you've treated your planet. Second, the incredible violence you do to each other. Third, and this is the really amazing thing to us, there's the condition of your brains. Our brains? Broxholm pulled on his nose and let it snap back into place. What baffles us the most of all is that the fact that the human race has the most powerful brain of any species in the galaxy. That's the end of chapter 10. This page is ripped. It's got a little tear. Anyways, that was a pretty good chapter. Chapter 11 should be coming out soon. See you there. Turn on post notifications so that you get notified of when I post my videos. Put your book request in the comments and like this video if you want merch.